Outstanding. Hello everyone, welcome to Build or Buy. We're slowly getting our components together to build a Threadripper computer. We're going to start with some of the basic items, and we're going to work up to a case. That's what this is going to be about. But the first thing we're going to do is get a couple of components out that we're going to be putting in that case to show you and explain why we do that. I've got to have a case that's going to give me access to 3 bays. And the reason I need those 3 bays are going to become apparent here in just a minute is because I use a lot of drives. The purpose of the Threadripper is for rendering. So we use this particular rack. This is an iStarUSA hot swap rack. Now this particular hot swap rack comes in a lot of different colors. I get the ones in red. I like red. Makes a nice statement in the computer. But I've got 2 bays, 3 drives. So when I'm doing a lot of data, I can move my data from one drive to another using SATA. Got to have some way to store it, and SATA drives make the most sense. Whether I've got an NVMe drive in there or another SSD for a scratch drive, I still use SATA drives to move data around, whether it's a 5 terabyte, 8 terabyte, or whatever. Now this particular hot swap rack from iStar, I'll tell you what I like about it. 2 bays, 3 drives. What I don't like about it, try finding that fan to replace it. I have not had any luck with the vendors that sell these responding to where I can buy that fan. It's a very specific fan. It's not because the fan is the problem. The problem is the connection to the fan to this case. So if that goes out, that fan becomes useless. But it takes 2 power taps and 3 SATA cables. They do include the SATA cables, but I use different cables. I don't use these cables. So what I don't like about it is the fan. What I do like about it, it's aluminum, it's pretty heavy duty, and it works. It also comes with a couple of keys. It's got lights. One light to show drive activity, another to show when the door is closed. All I do is close these. I don't lock them because I move drives around a lot. And this brings me to the next point. That's 2 bays. The 3rd bay, I've got to have access to a Blu-ray burner because I never know when someone's going to say I need a disc, whether it's a Blu-ray disc or they want a Redbook audio CD. So whether it's lots of data or a little bit of data, I've got to have access to this kind of equipment. This is what I'm going to be putting in the Threadripper, and that's why I need those 3 bays. So that's the first part of the Threadripper setup. So now we're going to take a look at 3 cases for our Threadripper, and I think all these are basic, but I think they're essential. This is not something we'll do at Build or Buy Live, but this is something we can do here where we can record it, show you what we think our opinion is. Your needs may differ, but these are some things I hope you'll have time to think about. I'm going to show you a power supply. Now we wanted to get the biggest power supply we could get in the smallest space, so we happened to choose an EVGA, and somebody's building computers, which brings us to another point that may be difficult to build a Threadripper because we're having trouble getting our hands on video cards. But we're still going to pursue this endeavor, and we're going to go that direction. And we may even build this machine live. So this EVGA power supply is the 1000 G3. Now there's been a new one announced by EVGA in the G1 line, also 1000 watts. Those should be available by now, and they too are in a smaller form factor. What I wanted was a big power supply and a small form factor to go in this case. And considering what we may be doing with this machine, I thought this was the way to go. EVGA G3 1000 watts. So that's component number 3, I guess you could say. And the most important part of this build is finding a case that will house this cooler. This cooler is the Corsair H100i V2. Now when we built the Ryzen computers, one Ryzen computer had a cooler with it. The other Ryzen computer, the more powerful and the one that I'm using at the meeting all the time, I put a larger cooler than this. Because it's a larger cooler, it's a larger case, and it's a little bit cumbersome. So this particular cooler is recommended for the Threadripper. It'll work, the H100i version 2, and because it's a little bit smaller, it should be easier to find a case that it'll fit in. And the specs on this are 276 millimeter by 125 millimeter by 30 millimeter. So we've got 2 120 millimeter fans that are on this. So that's what we're looking for in a case. So that is the primary reason that we're having difficulty spotting a case. So we're going to take a look at 3 of them. And I'll tell you what I like about these cases and what I don't like. The first case is a Lian Li. Lian Li cases sometimes are kind of hard to find, especially in the configuration for what I'm looking for. But if you notice, we start from the front. I've got my 3 bays I need. This 4th one, where they've got this stuff up here for the drive. I'll see if I can take that out. If I can, I get 4 bays. If not, cables will probably be consumed inside by that. On top, I've got a power button. I've got a door that'll flip back, and the door that flips back gives me four USB 3 ports. So I'll be looking inside to make sure the connector for this is the 19/20 pin connector for the motherboard. Also on top, I've got a door up here, which I've got to have. I'd like to do the radiator on the top. So if I pop this panel off, I've got a panel and I've got a filter. And that'll mount 220 millimeter fans. So far I'm a fan of it. No pun intended. And you can see how the top of that looks. Now I move systems around a lot. I don't just build a system and put it on a shelf. And I think a lot of cases are designed that way, or designed by engineers that think you just sit them down and make them look pretty. I have to be able to move a system around. Sometimes we take it to build or buy so we can show and tell. So when I'm looking at the bottom of a case, I need feet on a case that when I move that case around, those feet don't come loose. I've had some Corsair cases where they've got these little pads that come off, and it's extremely annoying. These are feet that are screwed on, and I can slide those in and out of the back of the car or out of the off a table on carpet and get it where I need it. It also has a filter on the bottom. Comes out on the side, either side. Now we'll go to the business side and we're going to open the door and look inside of it. This case is a little bit wider than the standard case, which is fine because that'll give me room, hopefully, behind the motherboard panel to put my wiring. So we're going to take off the lid. And I've also got the option if I decided to do water cooling. It's got the 2 holes out the back, like an EK water block. And there's a potential for that because there's now an EK water block for a couple of the Gigabyte boards. The Gigabyte Aorus, and also for the Gigabyte, the new one they've come out with on the X399 chipset. So as we look inside, and there they are. There's my 2 19-pin/20 pin keyed sockets to plug in my USB 3. That's good to see. Got my bag of parts. All these bays inside do me absolutely no good because when I've got cases stacked side by side, there's no way I can get to those drives. I need access. They've got to come out the front. So that's kind of useless to me. I can take those out, put a bigger video card. But the video card I'm going to use, I'll either use what I had in the other machine, which is a WX7100, the Radeon Pro from AMD, or there's a possibility we might use one of the NVIDIA workstation cards. If you're interested in watch this, send us your thoughts and we'll take that into consideration. Another thing I'm looking for where the power supply sits, it's padded, that's good. And I've got the grommets in back for the cables to pass through where they should. And I've got the large cutout in back. And the most important cutout, and I'll take this other lid off so we can see it, is the cutout for the cables that go to power on the motherboard up at the top left near the I/O panel. They've even put rubber grommets on the screws in the back of the case. Curious. That cutout right there is extremely important where we can pass the cables through the back. And on the back side of this case, there's plenty of room to mount all the cables and keep them concealed. Now, I would kind of like a cutout right in here. There's not one, but I can use this cutout so I can route all my cables out of the power supply from this end and route this up through here on the back side. That cutout right there is extremely important. So this case is one candidate. Now this case is a Corsair case. This is not a case I originally considered to build a Threadripper in. I have a couple other computers that need to be rebuilt, taken out of a rack mount case, and I need to put them in a regular tower case, mid-tower. But after I got the case and got to looking at it, I got to thinking, this has possibilities. I need something sturdy, lightweight, that's easy to move. So it covers my first grounds where I've got my 3 bays on the front. I've got 2 USB 3 ports. I like the fact that the ports are on the front and not on the top. It can accommodate 220 millimeter fans, as you can see right here on the top. So 220 millimeter fans means it'll take the cooler we've got. Power supply won't be an issue. I'm going to take the front lid off and look inside. The lid will accept a couple of fans. It looks like probably 80 millimeter fans. I've got the wire tap so I can plug in the 2 USB 3 ports like they should be internally. the 19/20 pin connector. And I've got a pretty good sized blowhole here in the back. I call it a blowhole, a cutout. Let me take the back off, where I can pass the power connector. I don't know if I'll have to have an extension cable. Won't know till I pull the power supply out and try it. And I'm not going to pull the power supply out until I'm ready to mount it. It's too easy to misplace cables. But looking here at the back of this, I've got a cutout up here I can work with. That's hard to see in a picture, but that cutout right there will do what I need. And you can see the cutout right there. That looks plenty big to pass the cables through there. It's a little tight, a little high, but I think it'll work. Now, on the inside, it's got a place for 4 SATA SSDs, internal, and of course it's got the rack here for the other internal. Again, I won't use that. I've got to have access to this stuff from the front so I can move volumes of data. Pads for the power supply. It does have the cutout right underneath the power supply, which I like, because some cables might get routed through here. So I really like that. The other case didn't have it. Standoffs are already there. Let's look at the bottom. The feet are always a big deal. And this is one place where I don't know what Corsair's thinking, but they're not. These are those little rubber pads. And they need to spend some time putting some feet on here because these are going to come off. I've had that happen. I have one computer that I have to put a bag over it to slide it around because those just peel right off. They need something that you screw on that won't come loose like this. So that's kind of a negative, but everything else about the case, it's steel, it's lightweight. I think it'd hold a Threadripper machine nicely. Now, when we get ready to build a Threadripper, the question is going to be, do we build it live or do we build it, record it, and edit it? For those of you that are interested in the Threadripper build, let's hear your comments. If you'd like to see it done live, it'll be done in the wee hours of the night. So that way there's no interruptions. When I say the wee hours, it'd be something we do like at midnight. Probably like on a Friday night, possibly a Saturday night. So you can think about it. Let us know your thoughts. It's interesting, the lids are going back a little easier on this Corsair case than they did on the Lian. I like Lian because they're solid built, they're lightweight. Of course, by the time you get everything in them, they're no longer lightweight. So that's case number 2. Now this is case number 3. This is also a Corsair. And this was my first thought to build into this until I received the case. And the feet on the bottom were bent. It uses a piece of U-shaped metal. And this happened at the factory. This did not happen in transport. And it did not happen in shipping because all the shipping was intact. So I bent the feet back. And I'll show you that first on the bottom. But there's not much to these. They've got a strip of rubber on there that I don't expect to last very well, and I'll have to do something to modify that to put actual feet on it, because the brackets they've got are because of these large filters they've got on the bottom. It's got to straddle that. So, but it's got a window on the side. The other 2 cases didn't, and it'd be nice to see, since we're going to build a computer with bells and whistles, it'd be nice to see the bells and whistles. Not into LED lights, doesn't make it run any faster. On the top, I've got a place for the cooler. It's a little bit bigger case, but I like the fact that it's got handles on it. 2 hands, almost like carrying an ammo can. But it's a heavier case. On the front, I've got my 3 bays. My controls are all on the front. I've got a power button that's easy to read on this side, and I've got a door that flips to reset. You can't accidentally reset that. I kind of like that. Usually nobody messes with a computer but me, but I kind of like that. Even I do stupid things sometimes, crazy things. And I got my 2 USB 3 ports. So this door that's got the panel, we're going to take this off, see what's inside. And instead of screws on the back, we've got these latches on the side. Again, kind of like an ammo can. Lid comes off easy. I like that. It's got a door. The case has good layout inside. Area where the power supply sits, a cutout underneath so I can get to the back panel. I like that. I've got a couple of fans here where I could put drives. Again, these drives internally are useless to me because everything I'm going to do is out the front. 3 bays, a burner, 3 drives, the other two bays. And the cutout hole that I need, let me get this other panel off. We'll take a look at it. Looks like I can work with it, but it's a heavier case. I also have a larger cutout here in the back. As you can see, that cutout, that's the best access we've had on a case. That way we've got plenty of room to put the cables on the back side and pass that power cable up and around where you have that other power tap on the motherboard. That's a big plus to me. And I'll put these models up to tell you what they are. I like the case. It's not bad. It's a Corsair. The cooler we're going to be using is Corsair, so that should help simplify life. But I'm a little bit concerned about the feet. But this may be the case we end up using. So that's the 3 cases we've looked at. The first one, the Lian Li. The second case, which we hadn't originally considered until we saw it, it was not in our radar. This is a Corsair case. A little bit smaller, but big enough. And then this third case of Corsair, with the latches on the side that flip on and off. I'm a little concerned over time how those latches are going to work. I'm leaning toward case number 1, the Lian Li, or case number 2. And because of the feet, I'm leaning more toward the Lian Li. So if you have any thoughts or preferences you'd like to share with us, we'd like to hear from you. This is our thoughts right now on our Threadripper case. We showed you some of the components that are going into it. And when we get ready to build the Threadripper, let us know if you'd like to see it done live. My name is Gil Boyd with Builder Buy. I hope you enjoyed this. Appreciate a thumbs up. If you got any questions, please ask. Look forward to seeing you next video. Have a great day.